And good afternoon, everybody. This is E. Marceau Portut, and welcome to another edition of the Sports Inquirer Show. We're very excited to have you today. We're recording this on August 13th, 2019. It is hot in our building, and it is even hotter outside here in Atlanta, Georgia. Man, when will this summer end? We are looking at the low to mid 90s. Matter of fact, I walked outside this morning to take care of some stuff, and it was around 9 a.m. and it was already in the mid to high 80s. And this is not even before the sun's really risen. I mean, so I am over. I'm a New Yorker born and raised, but we have some hot summers in New York, but Atlanta, this is ridiculous. But we're here with you talking today. Very excited. We do have some nice fans going on here or some air conditioning if we go to that resort. But yeah, very excited to speak with y'all today on today's broadcast. We're going to break down a lot of things from Atlanta United preparing for the Campeones Cup. And we were also in Mercedes-Benz Stadium for their matchup against New York City FC. Recap of that. We'll also talk about NFL training camps, which are now in full swing. I'll touch on the Raiders and the Cowboys, the two dysfunctional yet functional franchises of NFL lore, and how they're handling offseason distractions when the biggest concern you should really have is who's going to be your third string quarterback or your backup kicker. Yet the Cowboys and the Raiders find a way to make things exciting. Gives us stuff to talk about, so I'm not mad at that, but we'll break down some things there. And we'll also, in the miscellaneous department, I will talk about the two legends of our sports. Some that would argue were the best or are the best because they're still currently active, the best to ever play in their sports. Yet they were just like the rest of us this past weekend, getting older and bodies breaking down. I'll touch on that in miscellaneous department. You'll get what I'm saying from there. And also my wrestling weekend. A lot of action from WWE watching NXT TakeOver in Toronto and SummerSlam, as well as New Japan's G1 Climax tournament that wrapped up this past weekend. That's probably why I was not able to do a show. I've been catching up on all my wrestling. And I know we do a specific sports podcast called Verbal Submission, which I'll record tomorrow. Highly recommend you head to our site, and I'll give you that in a moment as well. But I'll touch on that a little bit. We'll do the full breakdown of all that wrestling on our Verbal Submission podcast. But it was over the weekend, so I got to touch on it a little bit and mention what's going on there. But speaking of ways to get Verbal Submission podcast and other forms of things that we are doing, from written content to all of our pressers and interviews and all the other things that we do on our site, go to our site, thesportsinquirer.net, premier site for news and notes in the world of sports. We just posted all of our content from Atlanta United's matchup against New York City FC, the full pressers of manager Frank Boer, Miles Robinson, Franco Escobar, and Pity Martinez. So we have all of those things up on the site right now. So make sure you go and check that out. On Twitter and Instagram, on the Sports Inquirer, that's all one word. Do a search on those, the Sports Inquirer, and you'll be able to get all of our updates as we post them. And also, I'm going to mention what we have on the sportsinquirer.net is our college football items. We're able to we went to Georgia State for the opening of their training camp. We'll be out there later on this week getting an update. They're about a week and a half into their training session preparing for the upcoming season. And we were able to speak with Coach Elliott and Dan Ellington, the quarterback, and some other players as well. So make sure you head down to the site or go to the site and get all of that. Sports Inquirer and the Sports Inquirer are ways you can search us on Facebook. So make sure you go to our site and see not only the videos and interviews, but also our little snippets. I like to give some teasers and a little bit of what we do from the show on those. So make sure you check that out. And finally, if you want to get everything that we're doing right at your fingertips, whether it's on your tablet, your phone, your laptop, your PC, your home computer, your whatever way you like to interact or communicate in the social media world, go to YouTube, SoundCloud, and iTunes and search us under The Sports Inquirer. You do that search, you subscribe to us, which really is great. Our subscription numbers are doing very well. We're very appreciative of that. But I always mention on every other show, or I try to remember to mention on every show, I follow a lot of sites as well, and I'll give them some love throughout time. I'll mention them as we go through the next shows in the future. But I know that it's frustrating to check a site every single day and maybe not have the updates that you want. So you subscribe to us on the social media platforms, and whenever we post something, it is immediately up on the site. That is a great way to keep track of what we're doing, so that you don't have to. If you want to go to the site 10 times a day, that's really great. And we try to put up at least one new thing a day, so there is something up there for you to see. But as a reader and a listener of podcasts and different social media or different sports sites, I know that if you go 3-4 times a day and there's nothing there, that can be frustrating. But if you subscribe to us, you'll get an email, you'll get a text, you'll get a flat. I personally, whenever I subscribe to things on YouTube or to WordPress, which is the home of our site, you'll get a flash or you'll get a notice that something's new has been posted. So that's the way I do it. And that's what we try to do on the site here for you, to make sure that you keep up with all the stuff that we're doing. So as I said, we're recording this on August 13th, 2019. We're going to take our first break. And when we come back, we're going to delve into the Offside Trap and the world of professional soccer here on the Sports Inquirer Show. And we're back. Welcome to the Sports Inquirer Show. Offside Trap portion of our broadcast, we're going to delve into professional soccer. We'll start locally and then expand internationally. Atlanta United was able to defeat New York City FC 2-1 on August 11th. We were there at the site of the contest. Really dominant performance by Atlanta for the most part, especially in the first, say, 45 to 50 minutes of the match. Josef Martinez scored 2 goals in the contest, and it was a record-breaking performance for him. The opening goal in the 42nd minute marked a 10th consecutive league match in which he has scored, breaking his own record of 9 that he did in 2018. And he also added another goal in the second half on the penalty, and we'll break down those individual goals in a minute. But those 2 goals overall helped him get 20 goals in 2019 so far, and he now has 70 career regular season MLS goals in a 3-year span, which is the most in history of any MLS player. And the victory itself ran Atlanta's home unbeaten streak to 11 consecutive contests. Julian Gressel and Pity Martinez combined on the right wing for the first goal. As I mentioned, that Martinez scored in the 42nd minute. Nice give-and-go passing. Gressel sent a cross across the penalty area to the far post, and Josef Martinez was able to deliver a world-class header above Chanot and past Sean Johnson, the goalkeeper for New York City FC, to give Atlanta the 1-0 lead. Josef Martinez was able to complete his brace in the 63rd minute. Pity Martinez was in the penalty area driving towards goal, and as he attempted to dribble the ball, James Sands his feet got tangled up with Pity Martinez, took Pity down, and it led to a penalty. I will personally say on that attempt, I didn't think that was a penalty. Obviously, and there was some dissension in the press box about it. Was he fouled or taken down? I don't really think so. That you could say that he got contact with the foot and Martinez went down. If you say that, yes, it's a foul. But I thought he got the ball, and I thought the ball, in essence, took Pity Martinez down. But if you did say he touched him in the penalty area, it's a foul. And if it's a foul in that area, it's a penalty. But I thought that was a little harsh. You got to allow defenders to at least be a little bit aggressive with their defense of their goal. But nonetheless, Josef Martinez took the penalty and was able to score and made the score 2-0. Now, Barrett pulled one back for New York City FC in the 81st minute, but that was all. Atlanta was able to emerge with a 2-1 victory and continue their home unbeaten streak, as we mentioned earlier. Let's hear from manager Frank de Boer and then Brad Guzan on the wins, and then we'll break down the numbers a little bit more from the contest. But first, let's pull up Frank de Boer and his post-match thoughts against New York City FC.
Good feeling, at the start of. You saw already, the energy and the ideas that we wanted, that they executed well, and so I already had a good feeling, at the start of this game, and I think it was a great performance tonight. We kept them alive with only 1 goal or 2 goals at the end, but I think we could have scored much more, and but everybody was working hard, get the victory over the finish line. And so I'm really proud, because normally New York FC is the team who dominates the most, I think, in the league. We had the first half almost 66, I think, ball position. That means that we did something really well. And I think they are not used to that a team plays against them like this. And I think it was a good approach, and everybody was focused. And, there is also a risk in it, but still, we were the dominated team this evening.
And as mentioned, Frank de Boer discussing the winning aggressiveness he was talking about, and Brad Guzan, goalkeeper, we'll get to his audio as well. He talks about that aggressiveness. Atlanta once again played a team that did not park the bus or park the bench. You can't park a bench. You can park a bus, which is a vehicle. But they replaced a team, New York City FC, that was relatively aggressive and played forward. And that allowed some countering opportunities for Atlanta. And also, Atlanta gave up some counters as well. And it took some good efforts from Miles Robinson and Gonzalez Perez tracking back on several occasions when it was 1v1 scenarios that they had to either stop the ball or at least slow the player down, or else they would have gotten a one-on-one and Guzan in the penalty area on some counters, and that would not have been a good scenario. But you look at the numbers, Atlanta led in possession 58% to 42%. They had 9 shots on target, which is the most on that they've had this year. They led in corner kicks 11-4. So you see the aggression of Atlanta offensively, playing a team in New York City that wanted to play along with them, and that led to open opportunities that led to some goals. Let's hear from goalkeeper and captain for the match, Brad Guzan, and his post-match thoughts on the victory.
All night. Before it even got to them, I thought we did a very good job, especially in the first half, of pinning them in and not even allowing them out of their half. It was very few times. And I think when you've got a guy going 1v1 against Miles, against Leandro, Franco, I'm gonna take our guys more times than not. So they were excellent in that aspect, keeping them pinned in and allowing us to continue to attack. And I don't know the exact numbers, but I'm sure the numbers will agree that we created plenty of chances tonight. So another night to certainly try to. We talked about it before the game. We talked about knowing what being a good team is about and what it means to be a good team. And being a good team is being consistent, home and away, being mentally focused. We know physically we're at a good point. It's August. If you're not fit now, you're probably not going to be fit for the season. So, but we talked about being consistent, and for most of the game tonight, we were good. The last 20 minutes or so, probably 25 minutes, we found it difficult to keep the ball, and at that moment, that's when we went back foot, and we were trying to. Say hold on, we still created probably 2 or 3 chances and could have put the game to bed. But listen, they're a good team. They're entitled to have the ball as well. And so if you look at the teams that they've played and the possession, the percentage of possession that they've had against teams, and then what we were able to do tonight, we'll know it was a good performance, and we'll keep this thing going.
And that was Captain Brad Guzan for the match, talking about the victory. Let's go into Josef Martinez, more of his numbers. As I mentioned, he scored his 19th and 20th goal of the season. So now he has scored in a league record 10 consecutive matches, and that is the record. He breaks the record that he set last year of 9 they did last season. And Diego Valeri also scored in 9 consecutive contests back in 2007 for the Portland Timbers. So Martinez broke those records. He also now has 70 career goals in MLS play in regular season, which snapped the record of Bradley Wright Phillips. So he set that mark over the 3-year period. And it was also Martinez's 14th career multi-goal game. So let's hear from, first of all, let's hear from Frank de Boer, because Martinez possibly was not going to play in the contest. He suffered an injury in training. They were unsure. He did not play in Atlanta's semifinal road win against Orlando City SC last week. So he didn't even travel with the team for that contest. So we were unsure if he was even going to play, but he plays a full match and scores 2 goals. So there's Frank de Boer talking about the availability of Martinez and now transition right into his thoughts on Martinez setting his scoring marks.
Only yesterday, of course, he did some light training on Friday. We had to wait for his reaction, and yesterday it looked well, but you have to also wait for today's reaction, but it was okay, and I think he played great, scored 2 goals, and if you see the header that he made, yeah, that's top quality.
And here is De Boer talking about Josef Martinez and just the scoring that he's providing for Atlanta.
Some kind of energy. You have to. I think he demands from other players that they, have to give the best out of themselves, and he pushes them, to the limit, and I think that's fantastic to see. He pushes himself to the limit, to scoring goals and always eager, to be there in front of the goal, and he expects also from his teammates, and sometimes he's angry about it when it's not going his way, but he keeps everybody awake, and I think that's also something, and he's doing great, and again, today was also a team effort. You see how many ball duels Gressel gave today. That was fantastic to see. But also that we saw that every time where we could be, a threat to our opponent. And so again, for me, it was a really good team performance.
And De Boer mentioned Julian Gressel. He had a strong performance, but just that front 5 or 6, when you break it down from both the Martinez brothers, they're not brothers in real life, but Josef and Pity playing up front, Ezekiel Barco, him, those 3 guys together provide a lethal grouping of scoring for Atlanta. And then you have guys like Gressel and Justin Miram, and even Darlington Nagbe playing up front. Or on the offensive side of the field, you have guys who can not only handle the ball, but keep possession. And when you have possession like they do, when you're in the 60 percentile and the 70 percentile, you make it very tough on your opponent. But Pity Martinez has been much maligned this year, by myself included, about his inconsistent play. But over the past few matches, you've really seen him come into form. And Doug Robeson, I got to give Doug credit from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. I think at one of the pressers, go to our site, check out all of our Frank de Boer pressers. But he did ask him, and it wasn't this match, but maybe the last match before that, where Pity Martinez is now 6 months into Atlanta as far as being in the United States, playing for the team under Frank de Boer. We know that they had those a few weeks ago, and we covered it pretty extensively. And we got our most hits on that out of a lot of, I don't know, maybe out of all of our pressers that we've put on our site, or at least on on YouTube and on SportsInquirer.net. Pity Martinez, he did an interview with the Argentinian media about him not being happy with the style of play in Atlanta, and Frank de Boer addressed it as well. That got a lot of hits on our site, so obviously it was a juicy topic. But the past few matches, we've not had that issue. You've seen Pity play very well up front with Josef Martinez and linking up with him and linking up with Barco as well and Gressel and all those guys. And here's de Boer's thoughts on Pity Martinez and what we've seen from him over the past few weeks.
No, of course, he already, played already, I think, a quite good level lately. But I think for this, if you see in everything, his work rate, his quality, what he showed, maybe this was his best game. I gave him a compliment in the last second. He made the sliding tackle, and we get a throw in from there, those things, he's getting fitter, of course, but also the quality and everything, is there. So, I think he will be very happy with his performance, and of course as a teammate, but also as a staff, we are very happy with him, how he's playing right now.
And Pity's aggressiveness and playing very well, along with all those other guys I've been mentioning, has led to more aggression on offense. Atlanta's had possession numbers comparable to this earlier portion of the year, but we're not taking advantage of it. They would have 60 to 70% of possession and only have 1 or 2 shots on goal. As I mentioned earlier, the match against New York City FC, they had a season-high 9 shots on goal, and Brad Guzan, the captain and goalkeeper for the match, was able to talk about that aggressiveness, how it goes from offense to defense and vice versa.
It's about being brave. It's about being confident. In the first half, Miles tries to give them an advantage and shoots one back at me, but unfortunately goes out for a corner. But I said to him, keep doing it. It's part of us playing. Mistakes will happen. Not the end of the world. We believe in ourselves. We believe in each other. And so those things will happen. But it's how you respond, and you have to be brave. You've got to have big shoulders and accept responsibility and say, right, we're going to get after it today. And if a mistake happens, You put your arm around the guy next to you and you say, right, let's go again. And he was great for us. And so, in terms of us being able to play under pressure, when teams press us, we're confident that we'll be able to get out of pressure. But not only get out of pressure, go 80 yards the other way and create a chance.
And that was Brad Guzan talking about that aggressiveness. And, yeah, that was a funny moment. I was not able to speak with them post-match directly about it. But, yeah, Miles Robinson, he couldn't have shot it any better towards Guzan. It did go wide, as I said, for the corner kick for NYCFC, but he timed that right. If he he looked like a forward when he got he took the pass or tried to block the shot or cross from the New York City player, and yeah, it went past the net. And then also you had Amari at one point. I believe it was Justin. Yeah, there was a cross and there was a header, and Amari headed it outside or out of bounds for a corner for New York, but about 2-3 feet in the other direction towards goal, that probably would have beaten Guzan. It would have been an own goal. But as you said, the guys are aggressive. They're attacking the ball, and that's what happens. And if you look at the MLS standings, we'll look at that right now. Atlanta currently has 42 points. There are 3 points. They're second place in the Eastern Conference, and they're 3 points behind Philadelphia, who continue to find a way to stay in first place. They're not a fluke anymore. They are a team right now, the Union, that you have to look at as a viable contender to get that top seed in the Eastern Conference. Atlanta has played 25 MLS matches and Philadelphia 26, so Atlanta does have a match at hand. But Philadelphia continues to find a way to earn victories and keep things going. And let me see their last match. I wanted to comment on it. 2-1 win over Houston on August 11th. And they continue to roll. They were able to beat Washington last week 5-1. So they are continuing to find their way in the top of the standings. DC United, they're at 39 points. NYCFC, they've played 3 less matches than Philadelphia and 2 less matches than Atlanta. So you do have to acknowledge that they have only played 23 MLS contests. They're at 38 points. So they do have some matches at hand. And that's what made it so important for Atlanta to not only get a positive result against NYCFC, but to get a win, because New York City does have those matches at hand. So if you get into tiebreaker scenarios, goal differentials, all that stuff, you want to be on the winning end of those contests. And then to round out the East, it's the Red Bulls, New England, and Montreal to round out the top 7. Toronto and Montreal at 33 points each, so they're right there. Orlando and Chicago at 30. They are in the outside looking in for the postseason. And that's probably the cutoff. Columbus and Cincinnati probably have to wait till next year for any postseason aspirations. And you look at the West, LAFC at 55 points. I thought Atlanta had an outside shot of getting the supporters shield if a lot of things had to break right for them. But Los Angeles just continues to roll and continue to win. They have 55 points in 24 matches, and their goal differential is the best, plus 40. Which I don't have to see what Atlanta's was last year, but plus 40 has got to be a record or pretty darn close to it. So, they're at 55 points, and their second place, Seattle, is at 39 points. So they have a 16-point gap between first and second in the Western Conference, and they're rolling right now. and they're finding their way to that first place finish overall in the MLS. So yeah, Atlanta though is in a very good position. You want to get the top seeds very good as far as the playoffs because you get a bye in the first round, and it's just a weird scenario. And we need to start doing some more playoff scenarios, and we'll get to that on our next few shows of where Atlanta, who their next opponent will be potentially, and all that stuff. But you want to finish in the top 2 or 3 in your conference. Get that top seed, though, you get a bye, which is really beneficial because the playoffs, in essence, are more single elimination now than ever. The home and the aways have kind of gone away as far as postseason goes, but that's how things are shaking. Before Atlanta does face its next MLS opponent at Portland, which is on Sunday, August 18th, they will be hosting Club America in a Campeones Cup on August 14th, which will be here in Atlanta. We'll be covering it. Very excited about that. The match itself is intriguing because it's right in the middle of the season for both teams. The Mexican teams, they're a little bit not as far into their season as the MLS squad is, but it's a championship. It's the best team from MLS last year, which was Atlanta United, after they won the MLS Cup. For the best team in Mexico, which is Club America. So those teams are meeting in this competition. You get a trophy for it. I'm interested to see what the crowd will be tomorrow, how it's being handled as far as interest. Now, when the Mexican national team plays here in Atlanta, it's usually close to a sellout, very rabid fan base, as you would expect. But that's for the Mexican national team. They're all together. I don't know how many fans in Atlanta are for Club America. Are they fans of Tijuana? Are they fans of Monterrey or Chivas or Guadalajara? You go down the list of all of the Tigres, and you go down the list of all the Liga MX teams. They might like Tigres or Monterrey, but they may not like Club America. So I don't know if they'll actually come out to the match. But it's still Mexican soccer, and maybe they'll come and support the brethren in that regard. We'll see what happens. But in the landscape, it is a difficult in-between match for Atlanta because, as I mentioned, they had the match against NYCFC on August 11th, and now they have to play August 18th at Portland, which is maybe the toughest road trip in Major League Soccer, especially for the East Coast team traveling all the way out there to Portland. So it's a quick turnaround. So I don't know what the lineup is going to be tomorrow. And I have to see, I believe it's all hands on deck because when Atlanta plays in the U.S. Open Cup and the finals coming up in 2 weeks, there's only a certain amount of non-Americans that they can have on the roster and all that stuff. But I think tomorrow is a pretty fair game. Everyone can play. So what's that factor? Do we see Lorenowitz? Do we see a Parkhurst, those guys have not started in the past few weeks? Do they get starts, or are they on the bench? Do we see a George Bello or Campbell from Atlanta United too? Do they get some opportunities to play in this match? So I don't know. Obviously, they want to win it, but is the grand scheme of things to be an MLS play, or is it to compete for this unique competition? So we'll see what happens with all of that. And then internationally, some leagues are starting up right now. First week of Premier League happened. I think, and it's a long, long season, so you can't make grand gestures of Chelsea's going to finish bottom of the table because they lost, I think, 4-0, 5-0. They got shut out at Old Trafford against Manchester United. Or you can't say that Liverpool and Man City are going to roll throughout the competition, or that Arsenal is going to find their way into Champions League competition, finish in the top 4, or Tottenham is going to finally break through and get that EPL title after their comeback win, I think, against Villa. I'm going off the top of my head right now with the first day matchups. But I will say, though, that you kind of see the top 6 are going to stay the top 6. I mean, Wolves is always intriguing as far as maybe they can find a way there. Everton, they made some signings in the offseason. But I think you're starting to see kind of the tiers already being set. Unless something dramatic happens or injuries really ravage a team, you're looking at Liverpool and Man City as the top 2 teams in the league. I think Liverpool pulls it off this year and wins the championship. Manchester City, 2-time defending champions, 100 points one year, 98 the next, all record setting. marks for EPL season with the current amount of games that they play. I think those two teams are finding their way into the top two. Manchester United, though, offensively, they're going to be very fun to watch with Pogba and Rashford up front and all of the options they have there as far as their wings and forwards. They should be able to put up a lot of points or a lot of goals. Maguire, the transfer from Leicester, we'll see what happens if he can solidify that back line so De Gea doesn't have to make 10 saves a contest and be the best player on the team, which it probably is. I mean, he's maybe the best goalkeeper, one of the top 4 or 5 in the world, but that's a lot to put on his shoulders at this stage of his career. Having Maguire back there can maybe solidify the back line a little bit. You have to figure having a Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, a little more consistency, and as the management, Jose Mourinho, he's not there anymore. So maybe there's some stability. So maybe Manchester United, can find its way in a championship race. That's a lot to ask, though, I think. But that top 3 or 4 in Tottenham, they finally signed some players this year, and so that's gonna be very intriguing what the Pochettino could do with them. And but I think that top 5 or 6, and that's at Arsenal and Chelsea. I will say this, and we'll end our soccer portion on this note. I know Christian Pulisic he's an American. As an American myself who follows the United States men's national team, it is great to see him in the Premier League. He did great things at Dortmund. He's in Chelsea now and everything along those lines. But, man, can we tone down the Pulisic train as far as the broadcast? And I understand what NBC Sports is trying to do because they want the league. And the EPL, they do a great job with it. I love their broadcast and the availability of all their games through their different platforms. So I like what they do as far as the broadcast. But, man, it was like the Pulisic watch. When he was warming up, he didn't start the match. He got in later. And that was a tough match for him to come into. They were already trailing. The vibe was not good. They should have started him from the beginning, but maybe Lampard, their manager, knew more than I did. I'm saying that as an objective viewer of it. But, man, is he going to play? Is he not going to play? Where is he going to play? When he comes in, the post-match analysis, obviously I think he's their most expensive player. He's their most expensive transfer in a very long time. I said NBC, I don't know, they want to promote him because he's an American, and Americans like to watch Americans, and all nationalities like to watch people from their country. But obviously there's a big market for NBC and for the EPL. They're trying to get more Americans to watch it. They always are. That's why they do all the tours in the summer. But, man, I just don't – Pulisic, he could have a very good year, score 10, 15 goals, assist on about the same amount, and that'd be a very good campaign for him for a Chelsea team which is in massive rebuild mode, especially with their transfer bans, not being able to bring in new players and going with a lot of guys 23 and under, which Pulisic is there. I believe Pulisic is 21 right now. So they're going to be an inconsistent team. They're going to have some days where they're rolling and doing well, and then some days where they get thwarted at Manchester United like they did this past Sunday. But, man, all the coverage of him constantly is going to be a turnoff for me, an objective viewer. Just want to see the soccer. And I said, look, I'm an Arsenal supporter, so I'm not the biggest Chelsea supporter, I'll put it mildly. So Chelsea, them losing doesn't hurt my soul too much. I will say that. But I want to see him do well just as an American and all that. But the expectations have to be tempered because he's going into a very – I think he's up for it, and I think he'll develop to a very good player. But it's not conducive to him just dominating and putting himself in the Salah and Silva and to that level of – or De Bruyne, like the elite players, not only in the EPL but in all of soccer. He's not going to be on that list. I don't think at least to start. He could develop into that. But right now, just one game in, it's like, man, just temper that down a little bit. But overall, it should be an exciting year in the EPL, and we'll see what happens there. We're going to take another break, and when we come back, we'll touch on training camps and all that going on in the NFL and Gridiron Blitz here on the Sports Inquirer Show. All right, and we're back. Welcome to the Sports Inquirer Show. Marcel Pertut here, recording with you today. Yeah, NFL training camps. I touched on it earlier on the show. At this stage of the season, you're figuring out your third-string quarterback, if you're going to have 2 kickers on the squad, who's going to be the backup center if you're going to carry, 6 receivers or 6 defensive backs. Yet the Raiders and the Cowboys, teams who have not been relevant. I was born in 1981, so I don't remember a Raiders Super Bowl championship. I was a teenager during the Cowboys Super Bowl runs in the 90s, so I have a little bit more knowledge of Cowboys excellence. I know the Raiders made Super Bowl when I was in college. They lost to the Bucks pretty badly. But point being that since 1995, no one has really gave a darn about the Cowboys and the Raiders on the football field, yet they have 2 of the top 5 fan bases throughout the nation. And that's because they were good at a time of guys who were in their 40s and 50s. Now that those are the guys that are watching TV, going to ball games, listening to radio shows, calling into radio shows on a national scale. And a lot of them were, when they were younger, Cowboys and Raiders, especially if you go back to the 70s, they were the teams of the decades. Them the Steelers, and then if you go further back, the Packers in the 60s. And what do you behold? Those are probably 4 of the largest fan bases outside of their own local areas in the NFL. And now we're in 2019, and both of them thrive in dysfunction, from ownership to the head coaches, the players. There's always something with them. We'll start with the Raiders and Antonio Brown. If you listen to the show, I'm not really, in essence, Antonio Brown, who is putting up Hall of Fame numbers. I don't call him a knucklehead or a head case, because I don't know what his mental state is. That's a little harsh on my end. But the man is putting up Hall of Fame numbers. He's on pace to either break or be close to some really significant records. He had some issues in Pittsburgh. They traded him away. He signed with the Raiders. They gave him a lot of money, about $30 million guaranteed, long-term deal. He started off with having the issues of his feet. I guess he was getting cryotherapy as far as for his body in Europe. He didn't wear the proper footwear. That's when you go into a machine that is sub 100, 200 degrees Fahrenheit temperatures. So he pretty much got frostbite. So he's burnt his feet. I know frostbite doesn't sound like you're burning something, but I know bite's in the name itself. But you figure, if it's so cold, how does it burn? Well, frostbite's a funny thing in anatomy and the ways things get done. So he pretty much burnt his feet through cold. That's what I'm trying to say. He's a wide receiver. That's not good. So he's been dealing with the foot injuries and all that stuff. And then furthermore, he threatened to quit the NFL as late as this weekend because he's not going to be able to wear his helmet. Now, he's been using the same type of helmet for several years of his career, but the NFL has made a ruling that the helmet that he's been wearing is unsafe. He's not even allowed to practice in it. So he's tried to go to the practice field. He went to the point of trying to paint over his Pittsburgh helmet and that one that he's been wearing for a long time and go to the practice field for the Raiders. They saw through that, and he threatened to quit, and he filed a grievance with the league. They appealed it, or they rejected it within 24 hours, and now he says he's happy to be back on the field and trying to play. All of this stuff, and he mentioned going through adversity and overcoming. He's created all of this himself. And then the Raiders, what can they do? John Gruden, who we know is been known to not be very sensitive to distractions like this, he's really taken onto the high road, but trying to embrace Antonio Brown and be positive with them about it. Yeah, I don't know if that's going to work, but I guess he figures that if I yell at him and go aggressive on him publicly, criticizing him, it may shut him down. Not literally, but we've seen in Pittsburgh, he's a very moody guy, so he doesn't want to get off on the wrong foot with them, so he's going to be nice in public. Now, inside the Raiders locker room and inside their offices, which I hopefully we'll see some of that in Hard Knocks over the next few weeks, their HBO series chronicling their training camp, he can't be too happy about this. And the thing is, look, with Antonio Brown, it's not necessarily what's happened, it's how it's handled. Getting the therapy in Europe and burning his feet, it wasn't mature, but I mean, stuff happens, but there's a proper way to handle it. You go in early, you say that you have some feet issues, and you handle it through training and you could just don't put yourself in that scenario. With the helmet, he's had an entire off season from January to now to deal with the helmet. And I hear all of these former players defending Antonio Brown and saying it's the league's fault. They're not letting him be him. They're insulting his intelligence. Bull crap. He sat since January when his season ended in Pittsburgh. They knew this rule was coming in. Tom Brady knew it. Aaron Rodgers, they have helmets that are not being allowed to be used anymore. Did you hear a fuss from them? Now, Brady and Rodgers have expressed that they prefer the old helmet, but you didn't see him threatening to quit and retire from the NFL. Look, there are multiple options of helmets that he can use. It's not like the NFL is saying, oh, it's only helmet A. This is the only helmet that you can ever use, and it is what it is. They have 15 to 20 options of different types of helmets that he could wear. He could have spent this entire offseason when he's trying to figure out what hairstyle to do. He could have tried the helmets while he was training and say, I want helmet number 5 or helmet number 7. I can work with that. Not be stubborn and say that this is the only helmet I'm going to wear. That's ridiculous. So it just causes all of these distractions, and I think it may be a way for him to distract from the fact that his feet may be more permanently damaged than we believe. If he saw the picture, and he loves social media too, anything that happens, good or bad, whether he's partying or getting the treatment on the feet, of course he had to put, it wasn't like a reporter had a camera with a long lens and secretly took a picture of Antonio Brown's feet. He put the picture of his frostbitten feet online himself, like this is some joke. Ha ha, look at my feet. The thing I make my livelihood on. He's a mess, but it's all about getting him to the field on Sundays and his training camp. And it's not like he was going to be running go routes all 4 quarters of every preseason game. That wasn't the case, but he is in a new system, working with a new quarterback in Carr and trying to get acclimated into the system. You can't do the antics that he's doing and not be prepared for the season. But it's the Raiders. They like the dysfunction. That's what they do. The Cowboys are the same way. Look, this Dak Prescott contract scenario, 2 weeks ago, it was Ezekiel Elliott. He wanted to get top money. He has 2 years left on his deal. He says he's going to sit out the year where he's not going to come back, even if it's regular season, until he gets a new contract. He goes to Mexico to train, so he's been out of sight, out of mind. Now it's Dak Prescott. He wants to get $30 million. Oh, no, he may want $40 million. Should be paid X amount of dollars. What about him compared to Matt Stafford and Matt Ryan and Kirk Cousins and Carson Wentz? They got $30+ million. Dak Prescott should get that too. All of these distractions and the Cowboys, Stephen Jones and Jerry Jones, owner and general manager, father and son, saying we're going to give them fair deals, top 5 deals, all these numbers. And then how do we find out that Prescott allegedly was asked for $40 million per year, which would shatter the market? I'm sure a Cowboy executive or two found a way to leak that out to the media. It's ridiculous. All of this stuff should take care of itself. Actually, I'm not talking about the contract. The Cowboys should say, we're not talking about the contract. Same thing with Cooper and Ezekiel Elliott. And then, let's see, we're the 13th now of August. Maybe the Monday before the first game of the season. New deal for Elliott. New deal for Prescott. X amount of dollars. And it just happens that way. The markets are set for these guys, yet they have to be kicking and screaming on both sides. I'm not on the owner's side. I'm not on the player's side. But there is such a better way to handle business than to put it out there in the public so much. But that's the good part about it, is it allows us to have stuff to talk about. But you do get inundated with it so much. And all of these things can resolve itself. Antonio Brown's not going to miss one single regular season game. Well, I shouldn't say that, because let's see with his feet. It's an injury. But barring amputation, and Lord willing, we don't, I'm knocking on my desk, we don't want that scenario. But barring anything severely major bad for Antonio Brown, he's going to play and he'll be all right. Whatever helmet they're going to choose, whether it's old one or new one, he's going to have to wear a newer helmet. And trust me, there are 15 to 30 options for him. He's the top receiver in the game. He can find a helmet from one of his providers that will be especially sculpted for him to have all the vision and all the things that he wants. He's good. He's not like a backup lineman or some undrafted rookie that's trying to find his way on a team and just begging to get a job. He's all right. Cowboys. Elliott's not going to miss any regular season games. He wants that paycheck. Dak Prescott, he's in the last year of his deal. He could play it out. And if he, now it's a little bit of a risk. He's not going to sit out games. But if he plays up to the level that he's played over the past few years, his money's going to go up even more. And the Cowboys know that as well. So he's going to figure it out. Cooper, 1 year deal for his last year of his deal as a receiver. He might have to play this year out. We'll see with him. The point is, all this stuff will settle down, and it'll be figured out. But it's a slow part of the sports calendar, so that's something that people need to talk about. And I just talked about it for about 15 minutes and got some coverage out of it, or some sports content, so good for them. All right, we're going to take our final break of the show, and when we come back, we're going to go into Miscellaneous Department about those two legendary players that are just like the rest of us, and I'll talk some professional wrestling here on the Sports Inquirer Show. All right, everybody, final segment of the show, Miscellaneous Department. Those two legends I'm talking about, if you haven't been able to figure out the clues, Serena Williams and Tiger Woods. Tiger had to withdraw from the Northern Trust event this past weekend due to back stiffness. The 43-year-old who won the Masters earlier this year is trying to work his way back into form after an inconsistent summer. Tiger's like the rest of us with the back stiffness, and I've been saying this ever since he's been in his comeback. And the Tour Championship's coming up here in Atlanta, I think later on this month or in early September. It's gonna be one of those deals where you can't trust him for 40, and it's not his fault. It's just the way his body is constructed right now. He's gonna play a round or two sometimes and have to withdraw, or he might have to withdraw before the tournament even starts, or he can put together 4 great days of golf like he did this year at the Masters and last year at the Tour Championship, and have the flashes of being maybe the greatest golfer of all time. And he's on that short list. I mean, it's him, Nicholas, and you got on the list of all the guys. If you want to throw Arnold Palmer in there, Ben Hogan, Sam Snead, we go down the list of all of the guys. Bobby Jones, can't forget him being in Atlanta. All those legendary great guys, he's right there in that list. He's not going to catch Jack Nicklaus's record of majors. He's not going to get to that 18, but he's still at his peak in his career. You can argue that at his best, he may have been better than Jack was at his best, but that's not an argument for another day. Point being, though, he is a legend, but at 43 years old, that's just the way his body is right now, and it didn't surprise me at all that he had to pull out of the event. And we'll just see what happens over the next few years. He's going to always be a contender in the Masters until he's 50 if his body holds up. That's just the way his game is. U.S. Opens are always tricky because they make the course so hard all the time. British Open, good part about the British Open, you don't have to necessarily be a bomber as far as driving length. As like a lot of these guys like Koepka and Rory and all those guys that can just drive it further than Tiger can never dream of right now. You can roll it a little bit. We'll see PGA Championship. That's, different courses. So he might have another major or two in him, but it's going to be very tough for him to find that consistency with the way his body is. Another all-time great dealing with injury issues is Serena Williams. The 37-year-old had to retire from the finals of the Rogers Cup final in Montreal this past weekend, giving Bianca Andreescu, a Canadian herself, the title this past weekend. What did Serena have? Back issues. Same deal. As I said, and as someone who is the same age as Serena, no, I'm 30. I'm 37 myself. She turns 38, whatever. We're in our late 30s. Tiger's in his early 40s. Back and knees are things that will not ruin if you're not careful, they can ruin your day and ruin your week. And it's not what you can work out, you can stretch. Sometimes you just sleep the wrong way, and those are elite athletes putting the same torque on those body parts since they were little kids. You're going to break down, and that's just like all of us. When you get out of bed, you might, let's say your neck might have been in the wrong spot, or you might have stepped on something not the right way, tweaked your knee, and while you would have just worked right through it and ran or run or keep walking like you normally would have in your 20s, when you're in your late 30s and early 40s, it may take a day or 2 or 5 to deal with it. So just seeing those two players and that's a legend of sports. Serena's the same way. I mean, Billie Jean King, Navratilova, Chris Everett, Steffi Graf. You go down the list of Margaret Court. You go down the list of all legendary players. Serena may be the greatest of all time out of all of them. I'm a Steffi Graf fan myself, but Serena and Martinez as well. But looking at it from an objective view, but Serena's right there, though. I mean, if you want to call her the greatest women's tennis player of all time, you can make a legitimate argument for that. But those two are nearing the end of their careers. You're seeing that right now. You know, it's interesting having those two great all-time Hall of Fame or Pantheon players dealing with the same issues over a weekend. And then finally, wrestling was awesome this weekend. I know this isn't a lot of you listening necessarily aren't professional wrestling fans, and I'll save my deep dive into all of the events and a Verbal Submission podcast. But we had SummerSlam, which is maybe the second biggest pay-per-view event for WWE this past weekend, right behind WrestleMania, which I'm sure you've heard of. But SummerSlam is the second biggest event, so there was a lot of going on there. That was Sunday night. That Monday, or yesterday, we had the finals of the G1 Climax, New Japan Pro Wrestling, which is, I believe, the second biggest wrestling promotion in the world. They're based in Japan, by the name. They have a tournament of 20 of the top wrestlers in their promotion, and the winner of the tournament is able to get a championship title shot at their pay-per-view called Wrestle Kingdom, which takes place the first week of January every single year. That's the Japan version of WrestleMania. And Kota Ibushi was able to win that, so that was a unique winner. So that was very exciting. But the tournament took place over an entire month, so I did not get much sleep. Waking up at 5 or 6 in the morning, watching professional wrestling hours away in Japan. But it was awesome. It was a great event. So we spent a lot of time watching that. And then NXT, which is like the developmental portion or program for the minor leagues of WWE. They have big events as well. And they had a big event on Saturday called NXT TakeOver in Toronto, which is where SummerSlam was as well. So there were a bunch of matches there as well. Adam Cole was able to defeat Johnny Gargano to become their champion. And there are a lot of great matches there as well. So the point is, the past week or so, I have not gotten much sleep. I've been watching a lot of wrestling, and it's been great. So a really good weekend there watching that. And as mentioned, we were at Atlanta United at their matchup as well. So a lot going on. And also locally, personally, I was able to put together the North Side football preview of teams that are in the, I'll say the Sandy Springs and area of town. And that goes from Westminster to Lovett, Riverwood, North Springs. I'm just naming schools that if you're outside of Atlanta, you probably not heard of. But we did a big preview for that, so I had to do photo shoots, interview players for the Elite, Super 8. So that took over my life for about a week. So that's why you didn't get too many Sports Inquirer shows over the past 12 to 14 days. But that's over. We did a preview. I get to see the print out tomorrow of it. So, yeah, it comes out tomorrow on the 14th. Very excited about that. Put a lot of hard work into it. So that's going to be a really big moment for us. So that's where we've been over the past few weeks, dealing with all those things. But exciting stuff, though. And football season's right around the corner. Very hyped about that. Starting to plan some road trips. Atlanta United, they're going to be in the playoffs. They might make a run as well once again towards a championship. So the grind does not stop. And that's not even including all of our stuff of baseball. We haven't done a beanball in a minute, talking about Major League Baseball, and Atlanta Braves are going to be in the playoffs as well in that regard. So very active times here for the Sports Inquirer, but it's great to have all of those good teams that are performing at a high level because it's more games. And we're not rooting for them necessarily to win or lose. We're objective as journalists, but if they win, there are more games. That provides more coverage for us. So that's good. We want that. So we'd like to see the local teams perform at a high level, or at least compete at a high level. That's very good things for us. We're going to conclude today's show. Once again, thank you for listening to the Sports Inquirer Show. If you want to follow everything that we're doing, head to thesportsinquirer.net, the mothership. Also go to Twitter and Instagram on the Sports Inquirer, all one word. Facebook, The Sports Inquirer. And finally, subscribe to us on YouTube, SoundCloud, and iTunes under The Sports Inquirer. Until next time, good fight and good night.